Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for the minor delay in getting started. We had some technical issues, but welcome to the inaugural event of Code for GovTech 2022. We are very excited to have you all join us for the first edition of this program. My name is Gayatri Chandrasekharan. I am Outreach Manager at Samagra. Joining us today are representatives from government, engineering students, and the broader GovTech open source ecosystem in the country. The idea for Code for GovTech has been a long time in the making. All the partners who are working on this program have been excited to create something which can foster the spirit of contributing, community, and mentorship in tech. So we are very happy to see all of it come together today. Before we kick off the day's proceedings, I'll quickly walk you through what you can expect. We'll be starting off with an overview of the Code for GovTech program, also called C4GT. We will then have Dr. Saurabh Garg, CEO of UIDAI, sharing his experience of working with tech in governance, drawing from his long and illustrious career in government. Dr. Garg's address will be followed by a moderated Q&A. We will then proceed to the formal launch of C4GT 2022. Post the launch, we will be introducing the C4GT mentors, who will be working directly with the selected contributors over the next 1.5 months. And of course, the most important part of today's event is the introduction to the inaugural cohort of C4GT 2022. We will also be hearing from Dr. Pramod Varma, who's the chief architect of Aadhaar, on what does it actually mean to build tech for a population of 1 billion. This session will also be followed by a moderated Q&A. And as the speaker sessions are going on, please do type in your questions in the Q&A box. This is a great opportunity to ask questions directly to the leaders of the Indian GovTech space. So we definitely encourage a lot of questions and interaction. We will then be bringing today's session to an end with closing remarks on the way forward for Code for GovTech. So to start off the day's proceedings, I would like to bring in Gaurav Goyal, founder and CEO of Samagra, to talk to us about what Code for GovTech is. But before we do that, a brief overview of what Samagra is. Samagra is a mission-driven governance consulting firm where the mission is to improve the quality of life of citizens through better governance. Samagra works with the bureaucratic leadership of states and the center to solve complex governance challenges across domains as diverse as education, agriculture, health, skilling, public service delivery, and employment, to name a few. All of this work is powered by tech and data, and Samagra has invested significantly in developing its GovTech and DataGov capabilities. All of this work in the GovTech and DataGov realm is housed under the Samagra X vertical of Samagra. Operating at this unique intersection of tech, data, and governance, Samagra has worked with its partners to conceptualize and organize Code for GovTech. Gaurav would now request you to share an overview of the Code for GovTech program.
Thank you, Gayatri, and happy to be here. Let me just start by sharing why Code for GovTech or why C4GT in the first instance. All governments operate at population scale, given the size of population, and therefore technology is almost an imperative. If you look at our own country, given the fact that most of our states are larger than most countries in the world in terms of size, and given the stage of development we are as a nation, how well we do on GovTech, how well we do on governance technology will almost determine how well we do as a nation in the coming years and decades. Luckily for us, in the last decade, we have done outstandingly well when it comes to technology and governance. It's all started off with Aadhaar, eKYC, UPI, FASTag, CoWIN. Today we are talking about Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission. We're talking about National Digital Education Architecture and so on. So we've done really, really well over the last decade as a nation. But this is not a one-time journey. It's something that will have to continue for the years and decades to come for us to really realize our true potential as a country. Now it boils down to the talent pool that will need to be there to continue this journey and even expand this journey in the years and decades to come. We have a large pool of engineering talent available in the country, but so far the sensitization, exposure, and experience of that talent to the GovTech space has been fairly limited. And it was this that some of us in the ecosystem were grappling with when we came up with the whole idea of a platform like Code for GovTech or C4GT. What is C4GT? It's an opportunity for the engineering talent in the country today to be able to get very hands-on experience, hands-on exposure, hands-on experience with the open source digital public goods or with the GovTech space in the country. How does it really work? So there are, over the last few years, there's a community of practitioners and organizations that have emerged who are working on open source DPGs or digital public goods. So a lot of those practitioners, as part of Code for GovTech every year, would select specific projects that engineering students can contribute towards by actual hands-on coding, and they'll give these projects as potential Code for GovTech projects. And then the applications get opened up to the engineering students who apply for these projects, share how they will kind of contribute to these. And based on this application, these practitioners, or whom we call mentors, they'll select specific contributors or engineering students who will be working on these projects during their summer vacations. And during this period, the contributors, the engineering students, will get very close hands-on mentoring from these mentors, from these practitioners, and in the process, we'll kind of provide and try and make sure that they get exposure to GovTech leaders in the country. So this entire exercise for about let's say 2 to 3 months every year, the idea would be to provide very real exposure and experience to the engineering students towards the GovTech space. So that's how this work year on year. This year is the inaugural edition of Code for GovTech. And as I said, and as the slide reads, let me share some specific features of it. So it's an annual summer coding program for engineering students. It will happen every year. It will be organized during the summer vacations in the colleges. And it's for now focused on engineering students. As we go in the subsequent years, we may expand the scope of it, but right now it's focused on engineering students. Second, it's a very hands-on experience when you're really contributing to an open source digital public good. It's not a dummy project. It's not a theoretical construct. It's a real active digital public good that an engineering student or a contributor will be contributing towards. It's a very hands-on mentoring. So during the duration of the contribution, which is 45 days for this year, would be 60 days in the coming years, the contributors get very hands-on support from the mentors who are themselves practitioners in the GovTech space. We also organize different forums during this period when there's interaction with GovTech leaders in the ecosystem that's happening. And all of this, while they're making these contributions, they get a competitive stipend and also an opportunity for pre-placement interviews in these organizations in the ecosystem who are working on GovTech. So those are some of the salient features of C4GT. In terms of who all are part of it in the year one, so there are 4 mentoring organizations from where mentors or practitioners have given DPG or digital public good projects for C4GT in this year. So this is EkStep, TKD, Samagrex, and Sanketika Consulting. All of these are organizations which are actively working on open source digital public goods, and practitioners for these organizations, whom we are calling mentors, they would be participating in this year's C4GT. Then in terms of platform partner, we have with us GitHub. So all the code that's written as part of C4GT would be hosted on GitHub. That's the platform partner. And we also have a couple of outreach partners which have really helped us reach out to the engineering community. This is CodeShift and Unstop. The entire effort this year is supported by Umedia Network India, and is the whole exercise is organized by Samag Transforming Governance. So that's the partner ecosystem for the first year of C4GT. And in the years to come, it will only expand to include larger and larger number of mentoring organizations, mentoring partners, and others. Let me now run you through a brief timeline of C4GT this year. So we kicked off, C4GT was announced on the 17th of May. C4GT 2022 was announced on 17th May. It was on 20th of May that we opened up for applications for registrations by engineering students. Before that, all the projects had been identified. Applications closed on 10th of June. We had around 20 days during which potential contributors could apply for different DPG projects. And then on 16th of June is when the final cohort of contributors was selected and their mapping to different projects was announced. So now we have, as we do this inaugural event, the final set of contributors, the first year cohort for C4GT. And today we are doing this inauguration event. This will be followed up by a midpoint showcase that will happen around the 10th of July, where whatever coding and whatever development has happened, contribution has happened by then, would be showcased to another set of practitioners from the GovTech ecosystem. And then the grand finale, once everything is done, all contributions are complete, would happen around the 6th of August. So between now and the 6th of August, there'll be roughly a 45-day period when different contributors will be actively coding and contributing to different digital public goods. We move on from here. So that's the timelines that we have for the inaugural year of Code for GovTech. If we can move on, yeah. So let me also wanted to share some statistics from this year. So we have received 346 applications from 57 colleges from across the country. And out of these 346, once they were screened, there are 92 good quality applications with all the things that were expected as part of them. So we've gotten a good number of applications in a short period this year. And this all cuts across different mentors projects. So we have finally selected 13 contributors this year for Code for GovTech. Out of the 92 applications that were accepted, 13 contributors have been identified. They'll be working on 9 digital public good open source DPG projects with support from 7 mentors from the different mentoring organizations. So that is how the statistics look for this year. It's what we're calling it. It's the inaugural year. It's in the tech language. It's a beta year, and from here we look forward to building on top of this in the years to come. Now I'll take this opportunity to introduce our first keynote speaker for this inaugural event. We have with us Dr. Saurabh Garg. Dr. Garg is an alumnus of IIT Delhi and IIM Ahmedabad. He is a 1991 batch IAS officer from the Odisha cadre. He has had multiple stints in the government of India, in addition to, of course, working in the Odisha government. He was in the Ministry of Finance earlier, and before his current role, he was a Principal Secretary Agriculture in the government of Odisha, where we had an opportunity to work closely with him. He is a reform champion. In his stint in agriculture in Odisha, he redid the state's agriculture policy, Samriddhi, came up, conceptualized and implemented something called Kalia, which was a counter narrative to farm loan waivers at the time. He really overhauled the way the agriculture department and the state functions, made it extremely data-backed, introduced data-backed performance management in the government, and many other reforms. And now last year he joined Aadhaar as the CEO of the Unique Identification Authority of India, and is really driving a whole set of reforms there, including overseeing how to expand the usage of Aadhaar across the country. So somebody who really understands governance, understands technology, and how to bring the best of both together to deliver outcomes at scale. So one of the foremost GovTech leaders in the country. A pleasure to welcome you, Dr. Garg, and really looking forward to your keynote. And we'll have Dr. Garg talk to us for the next 20 odd minutes, and then request everyone to write their questions in the chat window. They'll be curated, and I'll be kind of asking the questions on behalf of the audience to Dr. Garg post the keynote. Thank you. Over to you, Dr.
Garg. Good afternoon, and thank you, Gaurav, for this warm introduction, and great to be here on this Code for GovTech event. And I must compliment you and the entire Samagra team for conceptualizing this and bringing it at this level today. It's always been a pleasure to work with you and your team, and look forward to some continuing contributions from different people who are interested in this sector of how technology can work for governance and government. Just to give a introduction, I think when we are talking about governance, there are various aspects to it. There are issues of center and state, and state to state, and state and local government. And then obviously the focal point of all programs is the citizen at the center of everything, what any level of government that may do, or the different arms of the administrative machinery may do. And some of the areas of governance which we need to keep in view, or very often the issue is what is the metric that one can use to measure good governance, if I may put it that way. And I would probably put 5 or 6 measures, and then we can talk of how technology can help in that. So first is obviously reach and accessibility. Whenever we talk of any government delivery program, the foremost issue is whether it's going to be able to be accessible by all, or as we call it, to be scaled to population level. So the reach of the programs obviously defines the very basics of how successful a government program would be. The second I would put is on the ability to respond and proactively make dynamic changes in the implementation or the conceptualization of the program. Because while it's always desirable to run pilots, but very often one is not always able to run pilots. And while conceptualizing, we have to look at it, but I think the ability to be able to make quickly respond to changes that may be necessary also becomes very important. The third point I would want to emphasize is on the issue of transparency. I think that is one thing in the government, it's any program, it's extremely critical to prevent any kind of misgivings with anyone. So how transparent we are in the implementation of the program, that would also be a metric which would determine the success of any program or delivery of service. The fourth point I would mention is on the accountability, because there has to be a defined responsibility matrix, which clearly sets out what's the who is responsible for what, and what's the accountability mechanisms. And this is especially important because in the government, it's not the, so to say, the market which is defining that accountability. It's always post-mortem kind of audits that are done, or the programs are reviewed subsequently. And that's why it's very important to build in that accountability systems. And last but not the least, I would say, is the resilience to be able to manage unforeseen challenges. So how important are the systems that have been built in are resilient to look at it. So I'm just defining these 5, 6 terms to be used, that whenever we use technology for governance, we would need to take into account that these issues have been in a way built into whatever we are coding, or whatever we are developing, or whatever we are delivering through the basis of technology. Increasingly, a number of programs have developed a citizen charter, which is also helps two ways, both in terms of building trust, which is extremely necessary, because I think credibility is one thing which everyone expects from the government, and in fact assumes that it's there, and therefore we need to build on it. And the second, as I mentioned earlier, was on the transparency part. So I'll just give you some examples of programs which have used technology in the past, and that will give an idea of what kind of work is possible and can be done. And some of them are at the center level, and some of them at the state level. But before I get into specific programs, that there's always this question of a digital divide, that supposing we implement a program using technology, we need to take into account that what or how would people be able to access who do not have access to technology, who do not have access to infrastructure, who do not have access to connectivity. So that's an important part, and therefore there's always the issue of how much hybridization, if I can put it that way, of the program has to be there. Though you have BharatNet and PM Vani, which are looking at high-speed public internet access to bridge this digital divide, and BharatNet has reached a stage that nearly each of the 6 lakh villages or 6.5 lakh villages in the country have access to an optical fiber, but there might be issues of last mile connectivity. But along with the BharatNet, you have the citizen service centers, the CSCs, where are more than 5 lakh of them. So even if a person doesn't have their own computer or a smartphone, they would perhaps have access to a CSC or a cyber cafe, which is very close by. And then you have a host of platforms that are being built, like the National Knowledge Network and the India Stack, which really comprises a host of programs, which I'll just shortly maybe mention, or I think my colleague would be Pramod Varma. I'd like to talk about some of the programs which have used technology extensively. First of all, I would like to mention the PFMS, the Public Financial Management System, which in a way is transforming the way funds are being sent from the center to the states to the local governments and down to the, by use of technology, and how tracking is possible, how parking of funds is no longer an option, and how it is improving transparency, accountability, and usage of funds. So PFMS, I would say, is a great platform which has been developed entirely on technology. Then you have a host of government delivery programs, which broadly can fall under the DBT framework, the direct benefits transfer. So whether it's a PM Kisan, which Gaurav was mentioning, what Kalia and Raitu Bandhu had done earlier, and then got transformed at the national level at PM Kisan. You have the Pahel program, the LPG transfer, which was again on the DBT principles, moving on that. And then you have the fertilizer programs being developed, which will hopefully look at how fertilizer and the PDS program, for example, that is something which is using technology to be able to ensure that there's no duplication in ghost beneficiaries, by the fact that each of the ration shops of nearly more than 1 lakh of them across the country are using the Aadhaar digital rails to ensure that the foodstuffs are delivered to the right people. And then you have recently the eShram platform, where laborers have been onboarded onto the system so that benefits can be given to labor. And the origin of this was the migrant labor problem that we witnessed at the onset of COVID in 2020, when large number of migrant labor went back to their homes, and the problems were being seen on how to assist them. And based on that, we have now come to a stage of one nation, one ration card, where you might be having a ration card somewhere in West Bengal, but if 3 members of the family are in your home or your home village and 2 members are working in Bombay, 2 members can draw their rations from here and 3 people can draw their rations from there. And I think that's a great way of how technology has helped people. And it's that focus, I would say, which is what Aadhaar's focus is also. We are developing our Aadhaar 2.0, and the basis of that is to look at how the Aadhaar platform can be a participant in the ease of living of residents. I think that is what is the overall defining vision of the platform. And I would perhaps think that should be the overall vision of using technology for governance on how it can help the ease of living at the bottom of the pyramid. If that is what is being achieved, I'm sure a lot of other things automatically fall into place. And that's why you have the DigiLocker, you have the Umang platform, you have the UPI, you have the UPI which will work on the feature phones. And we need to be cognizant of the fact that while 80 crore smartphones are there in the country, that still means that 40 crore people don't have smartphones. And at the same time, while 90% of the people have connectivity, there is still maybe 5 or 10% where connectivity problems are there. So whenever we talk about technology for governance, and that's the issue about scaling up or with government, that 99% is not good enough. That 1% for a country like India is still too much for to be left out. So we have to have a solution which takes care of universality. And I think that's what needs to be at the bedrock of all programs. So lastly, I would just say that we have a lot of new technologies of AI, ML, blockchain, etc. And many of the problems would get solved by you using these more extensively. And I'm sure the young engineers who are participating in this are much more familiar with this than we are, and look forward to the kind of work that you would do. I would just say that last year, UIDAI itself organized a hackathon, and we were amazed at the kind of response to that and the kind of solutions that that the young students came with. Some of them we've taken in on as interns also in our organization. So I'm sure every government department is working on this. You have the Smart India Hackathon, which does across all departments, problem statements across all departments. So I'm sure this initiative of Code for GovTech adds to the entire ecosystem that's developing of people looking at broader issues, societal issues, and how they can participate in nation building. So once again, welcome all the contributors. My compliments to all the organizers and all the supporters for this program. And I do look forward to this program only expanding as we go ahead. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Dr. Garg, for your introductory remarks. Questions are coming to us from different sources, and I just request everyone to keep sending them. We're curating them in the back end, and then I'll be asking some of them, as many as possible, to Dr. Garg. Doctor, I'll start by, you talked about technology for ease of living, right? Technology for easing things out for the citizens. And you talked about different examples of places where technology has been used at scale. If you to look forward, what are some of the upcoming government programs that really you believe will solve for ease of living for the citizen and use technology, or some of the programs that you wish would come in the coming years, or some problem statements that can potentially get solved through technology in the coming years that will contribute to ease of living?
See, at the moment, just looking at the DBT and Aadhaar, which are using Aadhaar, which obviously becomes very often the basis for many of the using technology. We have nearly 1,000 odd programs of the central government, more than 300, and more than 650 of the different state governments. And the kind of uses that has been used is amazing. I mentioned a few of PM Kisan, whether it's for attendance across various areas, or to verify any kind of benefit that is being given. So that's one area that increasingly a look is being done at every government service, and to see how, or if not fully, what portion of that can use technology. And this exercise is going, for example, we are looking at the births and deaths registration, and how that can use technology to ensure that a lot of the systems can capture a person's birth and then automatically enroll that person in different programs. And at the same time, as and when a person expires, automatically that should take care of in the different systems, so that there is, and these kind of small things would make a lot of difference, one on the benefit at the birth and prevention of leakage in terms of death. The other area where a lot of work has already been done is the fintech sector. We've done a lot of work on the banking side, but I think where a lot of growth will happen is on the banking is perhaps the first kind of service on the financial service, but you have micro insurance, you have micro pension, you have micro investments. So while the number of bank accounts in the country are around more than 140 crore, which for a population of 133 crore seems very reasonable. But if you look at the number of investors, that's hardly 5 or 6 crores. So that's an area where how to bring in more people on investments. And that would also mean that people to look at investments other than the brick and mortar investments that they are familiar with. Similarly, if you look at the pensions, it's still in 2 digits, low 2 digits, somewhere around 20 crores. And micro insurance is also, so I mean, this in the fintech sector is another area where a lot of work would happen. And then you have, of course, you mentioned about the health sector and the education where scholarships are being used. So, and others would be a lot of other APIs that can be developed and used by the private sector. I think we've not even touched the surface on that, and I think a lot of work will happen out there.
No, that's very helpful, Dr. Garg. And I'll just pick on the thread that you mentioned in the end, which is the private sector and opening up the APIs for them to build a lot of solutions. A lot of the people on this webinar, Dr. Garg, are not from the government. There are 2 categories. One is from a set of people from the ecosystem that has come up in the last few years, which is working on GovTech and working very closely with the governments. And then you have a lot of young talent from across the country, which is wanting to contribute to this. Now, how do you see the participation of the private sector or the private contributors, private folks, or the whole question around PPP when it comes to GovTech in the coming, let's say, decade or so? How do you see that evolving?
See, a lot of the work that would need to be done for mainstreaming technology in government service delivery will need to come from the private sector, because though you have organizations within the government, and the NIC, I would say, is the National Informatics Center, is the primary, so to say, organization which does a lot of the work, given that it's operating even at the district levels and at the state level. But at the same time, the level of requirement of technology is so much more that it's not possible for any one organization to be able to do it. And it will operate at different levels. One is obviously in terms of developing APIs and software applications which can be used by citizens to access maybe databases or different services. The second would be, and where I think a lot more work would happen, is exploiting the space and satellite technologies for GIS and GPS based services, which I think we've just scratched the surface on that, and how that can be used. And apart from this would be, which would be episodic, I would say. For example, whenever there are disasters, or there are such kind of or festivals and melas which happen, which require high level of mobilization in a short time, where a lot of technology would be able to help. And there, I think it's the private sector which can really scale up and implement it. I think the main problem that where a lot of issues come around is the processes that the government needs to follow to be able to onboard a private sector player. And I think that's the biggest bugbear, if I would say, in this entire process. Otherwise, it would be a lot more easier. And I think the gem platform is something which is really helping in that, because it is taking care of a lot of the procurement issues which traditionally prevented more active private participation. So I'm sure as we move ahead, we will be able to work out on what should be the mechanisms for bringing in. I don't think there's a issue of need of the private sector. I think a lot of issues where we need to resolve are the mechanisms that we need to bring them on board.
Yeah. So more than the why and the what, it's more about the how when
Absolutely.
it comes to the private sector participation. Let me shift gears and pick a question from one of the participants, Nilesh Sharma. He's asking, is India looking to use blockchain and crypto for better transparency?
See, I mean, a short question would be yes, but I think a short answer, sorry, would be yes. But I think at the moment, both blockchain and crypto are yet to really, what should I say, stabilize and what are the benefits that they would offer. So blockchain potentially seems to have a lot of benefits, but I think the use cases are still being developed, and how those use cases would take care of what should I say, I mean, for example, whenever the government does something, there's always a final approval authority. In a blockchain, it's much more decentralized. So what are the kind of areas where you don't require, where the approval mechanisms can be decentralized and you don't need a formal authority to do it? And I think those are the kind of, and in crypto, of course, there are, I think on the cryptocurrency part, there are enough discussions, and the Reserve Bank of India has made clear what their views are on it. So I think blockchain as a technology, I would say, is something which offers a lot of potential. The biggest use case of blockchain is presently crypto or cryptocurrency, which may not be something which the governments are very comfortable with. So blockchain, where it can be used in other places, land records is one example that has been given. But I think there needs to be a proof of concept and more work done before we are able to really determine where it will make a benefit.
Sounds good. Dr. Let me build on a question that Aditya Chopra is asking in the chat window. So there we have the National Digital Education Architecture when it comes to education. We have the Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission now in case of health. We have the IDEA stack that is being talked about for agriculture. Now, these are all frameworks and provide some kind of a directional pathway for the different sectors. But to really make them concrete, to make them translate into tangible outcomes on the ground, how do you see that happening over the next 5 to 10 years? How easy or difficult is that going to be? Because these are complex sectors. And while it's one thing to put down a policy framework for it, but it's a very different thing to kind of really actualize the benefits on the ground. How do you see that playing out?
See, on each of these areas, whether it's health, whether it's education, whether it's labor, whether it's agriculture, for the government, each of these sectors are extremely critical because the delivery of services and what the citizens get is dependent on that. So while the overall overarching framework is what these programs or platforms are talking about, my sense is that specifics within this is where the work will actually happen. So for example, the PM Kisan is a program which is in the agriculture sector, and that's taken off faster, and that's being implemented using a host of technology inputs. So, and this is what will happen, that wherever there is a pain point or wherever there is a need felt for immediate implementation, that program or that scheme will progress much faster. But the very fact that you have at the back end an overarching architecture, so to say, so each of these schemes that will be implemented would ultimately need to fall as a part of that architecture which is there. So in the education sector, the first thing that's being started off are the scholarships. So you're building on that, and then a lot of other things will follow in. And I think it will be a combination of this. And it's very necessary to have that broader vision at the back of the mind to ensure 5 years later, we are able to tie it all together.
All right. Dr. Garg, the next question, again, coming from one of the participants is on open source. So the question is that while there's an ecosystem now emerging, a private ecosystem, which is very gung-ho about open source, digital public goods, and so on, and we hear a lot of policy, almost mandates is a stronger word, policy inclination on part of the government of India to use open source and so on. But when it comes to the ground, when it comes to, let's say, the states, when it comes to municipal corporations and so on, the reality is that that a lot of time there are custom solutions that get built which serve the here and now objectives of the tech transformation, but there's no real incentive to contribute to a larger DPGs and open source ecosystem. Right, the incentives somewhere are not that aligned, or there's not enough capacity there of service providers to be able to do that. So how do you see this being overcome in the coming years, and how do you really accelerate this ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. And to that, I would also add an understanding of the open system network apart. So no doubt when you are in government, as it always happens, that you want things to have been implemented yesterday. And therefore, a ready-made solution, which is marketed by some company, becomes the easiest method for implementation in the short run. And I think that's where this platforms that we have talked about on these ideas architecture or the education NDR architecture. So that's where they come in, so that there is a clear thinking that in the medium term, we need to be open source, but there would perhaps be short-term solutions which may not be open source, which will get implemented. But in a way, implementation of those kind of short-term solutions through branded products also opens the way to ensuring that those services are delivered on the technology platform. Then shifting from an MS SQL to a MySQL is a much simpler job than shifting from paper and pen to an MS SQL. So I think that initial job, which perhaps the large private sector marketing can open those hesitancy, if I can put it that way. I think it's a small price to pay, given the fact that the overall architecture and the overall vision remains that we move to open source in the medium term.
Coming, Dr. Garg, now to your current role as CEO of Aadhaar, how do you see Aadhaar or UIDAI evolve over the last decade or so? And what's in store for the future now that you're steering the ship?
Yeah, see, the last decade has seen, we have reached a stage where every person in India, every resident, every citizen, adult at least, has an Aadhaar. We've reached 100% saturation of adult Indians, and even in the 0 to 18, by the time it's age 5, it's more than 92%. So we have done the, I would say, the basic work of having the digital rails in place, and it's the next 10 years, while it would continue to improve those systems, improve the technology, improve the credibility and the security and privacy issues, where there will be no doubt incremental work, and even perhaps in some of those evolutionary work in authentication, where we see the role and where the next 10 years would move the country is how we can leverage this Aadhaar to be able to transform the way services are delivered. And I think PM Kisan is a prime example of such a delivery, where you could not have thought that in a period of 2 months, you can deliver funds to 10 crore farmers from scratch. Normally, these kind of programs took 5 years, 10 years to develop. The PDS, for example, the procurement operations started sometime in the 70s and they were reached saturation level 30 years later. So I think the way you can implement programs, and I think that also in a way meets the aspirations of the people who want immediate implementation of whatever is being talked about. And I think the next 10 years would see the implementation speed and the ability to even think of programs and schemes which you could not even have thought of 20 years back. I think the next 10 years are going to see that in the government space, and I'm hopeful that even in the private space, it will be seen. So literally and not just figuratively, it would be on the ease of living of residents. I think that is really going to be where the next 10 years of Aadhaar would transform the lives of people.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Garg, for taking these questions. And it's always wonderful to listen to your perspective. And we couldn't have hoped for anyone better to kick off the inaugural edition of Code for GovTech. And thanks for being here. I'll hand over now to Gayatri to take forward the proceedings.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, it's great to be there and look forward to these young people continuing their focus on society and the larger good.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Garg. Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you, Dr. Garg, for such an insightful session. These were great questions and made for a great discussion. I would now like to invite Rahul Kulkarni, who's Chief Technologist at Samagra, to take us through the formal launch of Code for GovTech. Rahul, over to you.
Thanks, Gayatri. Dr. Garg, we're indeed honored to have you here today. In your august presence, may I invite you to say a few words as we launch Code for GovTech formally.
Thank you. And just as I was saying, it's great to see this kind of initiative. And what is even more heartening is to see the kind of response that you, in the very inaugural year, you had nearly 400 odd people wanting to strive for being a part of it, and look forward to the Code for Tech becoming viral in the student community and more students working or attempting to work for a larger good for the society and for the government. Great to see you, and all the best to see what you will achieve in your short internship that you have. All the best to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Garg.
Thank you, Dr. Garg. Thank you, Rahul. Thank you so much for launching Code for GovTech formally. Heartiest congratulations to all the partners, mentors, and contributors. We are really looking forward to an exciting couple of months now. Thank you so much. I would now like to invite Supreet, Vice President at Samagra, to introduce the C4GT mentors and contributors.
Thank you, Dr. Garg, and thank you, Gayatri. And it gives me immense pleasure to introduce you all to the first C4GT mentor group. This is a diverse group of experienced GovTech practitioners. Every mentor who's here has had a unique experience, and I want to spend the next few minutes to highlight who these mentors are. So overall, as you would have seen, we've got 7 mentors from different organizations who will be mentoring contributors across 9 projects. So as we move forward, I'll spend a few minutes for each to give you a background of each of the mentors. So starting off, we first have Ashish. So Ashish is currently working as an engineering manager at Samagra. He focuses a lot on our DataGov initiatives. Before joining Samagra, he spent 9 years at Facebook, building products at scale for businesses across the world. He has previously done his graduation in computer science and engineering from IIT Kharagpur in 2012. We welcome Ashish as part of the mentor group. He's going to be mentoring students on the machine learning platform project. And the objective of this entire work that's happening in this project is to improve the usage of data sets in governance. Moving forward, we have Ashwin. Ashwin is the co-founder and CTO of Take3 Technologies. Take3 is a software services company that works extensively on building GovTech products and digital public goods. Ashwin has led the Take3 team on several GovTech projects, including Diksha, which is the national learning platform, and also on the UIDAI website. Ashwin has previously been a Google Summer of Code mentor in the past, and has also been a contributor and managed work on the Joomla CMS project. Ashwin is going to be managing the Shiksha related work, and Shiksha, through this work, the objective is to create edtech products with dependable end user experiences for governments. We welcome you, Ashwin, and look forward to have you as a mentor on this journey. Moving forward, we have Bharat. Bharat is a full stack developer at Material UI, and he focuses on building, building UIs easier and faster for more and more people. He started contributing to GovTech as an intern at Social Corps while he was working on the Disha dashboard, while he was completing his bachelor's in computer science at Harvard University. He then worked with the X team at Smagra, where he contributed multiple features to the X admin. In his spare time, he's also a volunteer with the iSpirit group and is currently volunteering on a lot of the DEPA work that they're doing, and also on the Indian Software Product Registry. He is going to be mentoring students on the Competency Passbook project. In this project, the objective is to create a student engagement and a learning record mechanism to store this learning record for different types of learners. This could be across education or any other group wherever somebody wants to store a competency. So we welcome Bharat to the group and really excited to have you work with contributors. There's also one of the things that he always used to talk about when we would talk about engaging with college students. So it's great to have you as a mentor in this project. Moving forward, we have Chakshu. Chakshu is a civil engineer from Bhotias College of Engineering and has done his MTech in structural engineering in civil from IIT Delhi. He currently works is part of the X team at Smagra. Prior to Smagra, he was working at an IoT startup, CarSense, as a senior software developer. Before that, he held a position of assistant professor at Amity University, Gurgaon, where he taught civil and structural engineering. His belief that employing technological tools can help lead to better governance and improve the lives of citizens brought him to Samagra. And through the past couple of years, he's driven a lot of very interesting prototypes, which are now working at scale. And he's going to be working with the contributors on a centralized access control project. Really excited to have Chakshu on board with us, and really excited to see all the project work and the engagement that has gone through the past couple of weeks on Discord, and look forward to have you as a mentor, Chakshu, on C4GT. Then we have Karthik. Karthik is currently working as a technical lead at Sanketika Consulting Private Limited and has over 5 years of experience in working on open source projects. He has worked, he consistently works on the work on Sunbird building block. So Sunbird is the building block that powers Diksha, the national learning platform. So he has been making and working a lot on the Sunbird building block that powers Diksha. And he's worked as software engineer previously at NIIT and Value Labs. And he has done his computer science from Aurora's Technological and Research Institute in Hyderabad. In the C4GT project, he'll be looking at the QML-based project. QML is essentially a spec for managing questions and question sets. And this is something that is working at scale on the Diksha, and multiple states are using this particular spec for driving a lot of their question creation and question set assessment creation process. So welcome, Karthik, once again to this program. Then we have Manav. Manav has been part of a variety of organizations, from building tech stacks, from enabling farmers at Bharat Agri to delivering more than 1 million orders through this continuous innovation at Swiggy. Currently, he's at Postman. He is part of the API first approach, impacting millions of developer communities across the globe. He has engaged with early stage startups like Ion Energies, eBike Go, Tyset, to set up engineering infrastructure and build teams to set them up for success. He's going to be working on the YOS project that we have. The idea of the YOS project is to increase citizen engagement online by using very shortened links. So we welcome you, Manav, on this project and look forward to having you as a mentor on C4GT. Then we have Shruti. Shruti is pursuing a bachelor's degree in computer science from GSS Noida. She has previously been a Google Summer of Code contributor. She's worked on contributing to Forsology and has also worked with different startups in the past. Shruti is passionate about automation and to contribute to open source. An opportunity to leverage her tech skills to build open source products for governments brought her to Samagra. She's currently part of the X team at Samagra and is also a source for code mentor this year as well. So look forward to having you with us as a mentor, Shruti. Shruti is going to be working on the X-Admin Sunbird RC projects with the contributors. You would have already seen a lot of engagement that Shruti is doing on the Discord groups about the project. So really excited to have her on. And to all at the end, I would like to thank all our contributors who have volunteered to mentor the selected group of contributors through the next 2 months. It's a first of its journey for this kind of projects, and we look forward to having you on board and to engaging continuously with the contributor core for the next 2 weeks, for the next 2 months. So moving on, this was the mentor group, and they're all here they're all joined here, and we also have with us all the contributors who have been selected, and I know a lot of you who've been part of the Discord community also here, but I do want to take this time to congratulate and to welcome the first set of C4GT contributors. We had over 600 students who were part of the C4GT Discord channel, and it's amazing to see the interactions on the groups. We've received a lot of competitive proposals, and I do want to congratulate the final set of contributors who have been selected. And these contributors are spread across multiple colleges. We have 13 in total, and I'm going to spend the next few minutes giving you a brief overview of who they are, and a big applause to whoever is part of this group. So first we have Akshay. Akshay will be working with us on the YOS project. And then we have Ansh Sarkar from the Kalinga Institute, who will be working with us on the competency passbook project. Then we have Arshpreet Singh, who's from IIT Bhilai, who will be working with us on the UCI web channel. Then we have Deep Darshan, who's from Sri Vaishno Devi University, who will be working on the QML project with Karthik. Then we have Hardik Sharma, NIT Kurukshetra, who will be working on the Shiksha project with Ashwin. Then we have Harshil Jani from NIT Surat, who will be working on the X-Admin Sunbird RC with Shruti. Then we have Himanshi Kukreja from IIT Hisar, who will also be working on the QML project with Karthik. And we have Janvi Lande from IIT Guwahati, who will be working on machine learning with Ashish. Then we have Kanika Gala, who will be working, who's from ABES Institute of Technology, who will also be working on YOS with Manav. Then we have Khushbu, who's from Jaipur Engineering College, will be working on the centralized access control with Chakshu Gautam. Then we have Nilesh Sharma from VIT, who will be working on the UCI web channel with Chakshu. And we have Pratyash Singh from IIT Allahabad, who will be working on the machine learning platform with Ashish. And finally, we have Siddhant. Siddhant is from NSIT and will be working on the Shiksha project with Ashwin. So these were all the contributors. I would want to give you a warm welcome to this project, to the C4GT program, the first batch. I want to welcome you all once again to C4GT 2022. And all the work, I do want to call out that all the work that's going to happen through this, each of these projects that are currently being worked on, are projects that have a GovTech related use case at the end. So it's important to call out that all the contributors will be contributing to projects that would be used across different states in different programs as we move forward. So a big congratulations to all of you who've joined us from different states in the country. And then look forward to having you contribute to the C4GT program and to ultimately the products and digital public goods that will be scaled for GovTech use cases as we move forward in different GovTech contexts. Thank you and welcome once again to all of you.
Thank you, Sukhpreet. Once again, heartiest congratulations to all the contributors for C4GT 2022. Like I said, looking forward to a really exciting couple of months now. I would now like to ask Rahul to introduce Dr. Pramod Varma, Chief Architect of Aadhaar, who will be delivering the keynote address on Building for a Billion. Rahul, over to you.
Thanks again, Gayatri. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce you to my close friend, mentor, technology guru, and inspiration to all of us, Dr. Pramod Varma. Pramod is one of the world's best technology architects. No one understands how to build population scale systems better than he does. Starting with Aadhaar in 2009, where he continues to be chief architect, Pramod also architected eSign, Digital Locker, UPI, and most recently Beckn that powers several open standards such as Unified Health Interface, Open Network for Digital Commerce, IDEA for Agriculture, amongst others. Pramod is also the CTO at EkStep, a nonprofit that has helped build several digital building blocks under the Sunbird umbrella, bringing together several organizations. He has been an amazing mentor, having inspired several organizations and individuals to start contributing to open source GovTech. It is indeed an honor to welcome you, Pramod. Over to you for your keynote address.
Thanks, Rahul. You're very kind to introduce me like this. But by the way, for some reason, I'm not white. I have a black hair, in case you're seeing my white hair. Okay, there's something going on with the Zoom video. You are not seeing my video correctly, right? You are not seeing, right?
Yeah, we can see the old version of Pramod, although you've got
a I know, yeah, but yeah. So I'm going to switch it off. Something is gone bonkers with Zoom. I just got off Zoom and it was working well. I don't know.
No, please don't worry.
But I'm going to share a deck. By the way, just pleasure to see all of you. Wonderful to see all of you stepping up to contribute towards open source and GovTech. Nothing like having young people like you guys. So I'm going to share my deck, okay? And actually switch back to a question answer subsequently. Okay. Are you able to see it? You can confirm by, yeah. If someone can confirm by audio, if you can see that?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to rush through very quickly, okay? And some of you may have heard me speaking before, but you need to take a step back. And I think you understand why open source in Gov and building national digital infrastructure, public infrastructure is such a critical thing. And, India has been blessed with lots of IT talent and including all of you. And so we have the capability and we have the intent to use open source everywhere. And I can tell you, I can talk through some of this. But understand something really big is happening in India. And it's very different from much part of the world. And they're all learning from India aggressively. And now you saw the news about UPI going to France. UPI is already in Singapore and Dubai. And because I think while some of the people here tend to not believe that we can actually do it, when we pull it off, I think everybody seems to be mesmerized by the beauty of such a system. So anyway, we have been lucky enough to get some things right. So we'll talk about that today. But you need to understand a larger purpose of why GovTech and why digital public infrastructure. And I'll give you a sneak preview, and these are only part of it, okay, for the young people who may not have seen. Back in 2008, by the way, India had 17% people with bank accounts. 17. And probably none of you, I don't know whether you, maybe unless some of you come from really underprivileged family, most of you, probably your parents as well, had bank accounts. That means all of you are the part of the 17 or 20% who had bank accounts. 2009 is when Aadhaar identity program was launched. And 2011 is even then we were under 20%. That is only 20% of the people had access to bank account. Think about it. That's a terrible state to be in. When was smartphone launched? 2007, right? And iPhone, and then 2008, Android. Even when the world was getting connected and everybody starting to have smartphone launched, we were so behind in bank accounts. The same thing, by the way, India is also a very high subsidy giving country because much of Indians, out of 900 odd million adults and nearly 4 billion people, much of the people actually depend on government subsidies. But what is the problem again? Huge leakage. And why did I put gas cylinder? Because no common man has gone through not seeing cooking gas subsidy, right? Almost, if anybody know, if you come from middle class, you know your parents would have availed cooking gas subsidy because everybody had, and this was a big deal. And this was not the only one. Fertilizer subsidy, pensions and scholarships, and so much of money used to go down the pipe, and with lots of corruption. And it's not a good place to be in because eventually it's taxpayers' money. But in general, if you abstract it, it was not only restricted to bank account and everything, even lending. Do you know how many, our GDP to lending ratio is so pathetic that, you know, sort of Vijay Mallya's of the world can easily get 10,000 crores because of the, you know, the systems prefer to lend to few large institutional borrowers. So there was a study conducted by Institute of Management Bangalore, one of the professor. I'm very sure all of you are trying, or many of you are trying CAT and all. It's one of those Indian religion, right? Everybody has tried CAT exam. So as you are trying, and when they joined the campus, the first day of their campus recruitment, there was many banks who set it up in the campus, offering loans. Obviously, because they're all coming, they're going to come out with massive salary, 1 crore salary, half crore salary, and all the ridiculously shameful salaries, right? So it's pretty straightforward these days. So IIM guys know it, so the banks know it, so they were all camping outside to lure students into taking some big loans, and it's not a bad deal. Go get it. But instead, the professor challenged students to go out directly to the market and try to get a 10,000 rupee loan, not a 10 lakh loan, 10,000 rupees. 0 people managed to get it. 0 people managed to get it. That's because our systems today does not have the ability to deliver high volume, low tenure, low sachet size. So what do you think people are doing? The people who driver who work at your place, or a maid who work at your place, if they want a 5,000, 10,000 rupee loan for a small surgery in the hospital, where do you think they are going? They go to money lender, roadside money lenders. Institutions have failed them. It's not because we wanted to fail them. It's because of the compliance costs. So look at the 3 costs. Understand these 3 costs. These are the fundamentals of delivery of anything in the country. Cost of acquisition of a customer, cost of continuous engagement with that customer. Even if you're an entrepreneur, when you start a company, you will have these costs to deal with, okay? And cost of engagement and cost of trust. A lot of banks, when you walk in and say, oh, by the way, I'm an IIM student, or I'm from this, or I'm an SME, the roadside Kirana shop guy, there's no way to prove any of this. And there is the cost of trust is very high. So low tenure, low volume, high volume lending offers are impossible. So this is, again, as an example, same thing goes for tech everywhere, okay? So you'll see the same thing happening. But if you fast forward, I'm fast forwarding, it's no more 2009, it's 2020 or 2021. This is 2021 data, by the way. $70 billion US dollars went directly to people's bank account in India. No middleman. In the last 10 years, Indian government delivered benefits directly to bank account. 310 schemes, state and center government. Roughly 6 billion transactions. India is the only country in the world that has the infrastructure, digital infrastructure, to deliver money at negligible cost directly to bank accounts of people. This is why when COVID hit, 450 million people received COVID benefits in the first lockdown, by the way. You know what US did? Did you any of you study what US did? US were writing check. US government was writing check and posting it to people's houses. to give $50, $100, and $200, $300. I mean, cost of posting and cost of writing that check and cost of depositing check is probably more than that what you are sending. So it doesn't even make any sense. And this is amazing what India has built, and we sort of underestimate the power of it. And this is a study from BIS. You know who BIS is? You know RBI, of course, right? It is a Bank of India. It's a central bank in India, and all the central bank of central bank goes to BIS, Bureau of International Settlements in Basel. Okay, they came out with a report after studying India and said, India in 2011. We had just below around 20% bank account penetration. That was the flag. That's where the flag is. And if India did nothing unusual, nothing crazy like our India Stack, if you did nothing crazy like India Stack, we would have taken 46 years to get to 80% of bank account. In a normal GDP plot, they plotted the GDP growth and they said, yeah, of course, we would have eventually given bank account to people. But it would have taken roughly about 46 years. You know how long India took to get to 80 plus, now plus 90 plus bank accounts? 6 years. So India compressed 4 decades of development cycle using digital technology, digital infrastructure, not some mobile app, underlying rails, digital rails for payments, digital rails for credentialing, which is DigiLocker, digital rail for identity, and digital rail for data now. That's what we are doing, right? That's the difference. India was systematically building digital infrastructure like countries build physical infrastructure, like shipyards and airports and railroads and highways. We build it, right? Of course, we build it for economic growth, but nobody thinks about digital infrastructure. We leave it to TikToks and Googles and Amazons of the world to hope that somehow one of them will solve it. They don't, because they have a different reason that they exist. They exist as a commercial venture. They are answerable to shareholders. They're not answerable to 900 million people who are in some country, right? If you're a customer, Amazon will pick up the call. If you're not a customer, why would you call? Right? So it's very important that countries cannot ignore the need for digital infrastructure, and India will. What are the layers? Very simple. Identity, just identity, a pure play identity. And all Aadhaar did was authentication and KYC, nothing more. And how many attributes Aadhaar had? 4 fields in the database. Name, date of birth, gender, address. That's it. Not even blood group, not even height, weight, not even caste, no religion, no BPL status, below poverty, above poverty, nothing. Just 4. It was just about identity. But the way it was built, that it was built with an open API on top of it, so that others can do single sign-on solutions and eKYC solutions and bank account opening and tax collection being better, benefits transfer getting better, PAHEL scheme, the cooking gas cylinder delivery scheme getting better, but they're done by different people. Today, Aadhaar does 1 billion digital authentications every month. 1.2 billion last month. You and I. 1.2 billion people, or out of that, maybe 300 million people, 2 or 3 times a month, are authenticating themselves to avail benefits for themselves, right? And this is an amazing story, right? 1.33 billion people have digital ID in India. No other country can actually claim this kind of penetration. It's just crazy. And on top of that, we built transaction systems, right? Core payment system, and electronic digital signature and payment system, both Aadhaar payment and UPI. And if you're not heard about UPI, not used UPI, I don't know where you have been in the last 4 years, but UPI is such a marvelous story from nothing in 2016 to 2022, where we just closing out 6 billion transactions a month. And last year alone, last year, India overtook real-time payments, overtook China plus US plus UK. So India is doing more real-time payment transactions than US, UK, and China put together, all in the last 4 years. This non-linear transformation comes from open digital infrastructure. And open digital infrastructure is built using open source, fundamental. Okay, and that's why you exist. That's why I'm speaking to you. Why I even speaking to you is that, right? And of course, on top of that, we built DigiLocker for credentialing and deeper, which is account aggregator. I don't know that you're starting to see where India as a country, unlike GDPR, US doesn't even have a privacy bill. Unlike Australia has done a good job there. India is setting up a digital infrastructure, not a central system, a digital infrastructure, protocol-driven digital infrastructure that allows you to own your data, and every driver of Uber to own their data, every plumber of urban company to own their data. You know what is the data becomes the asset for them. That means data reduces the cost of trust and cost of processing. Today, with account aggregator, a lending offer, there's pilots going on in this country, by the way, where real-time lending offers are made less than a minute with zero paperwork. I can authenticate using GSTN and Aadhaar, GSTN for company, Aadhaar for myself, apply for a loan, get a loan offer, get the money, all by sharing my data and my bill payment data, tax payment data, directly, all digitally signed data with zero paperwork. And that is inclusive development. Not because you and I, the top 10% of the country, 80, 90 million people have access to everything, and the remaining 900 million people are left in the lurches. That's not what we are, because that great divide is not going to go anywhere, right? So it's very important that we actually create digital infrastructure that actually expands the market, expand access to products, access to services, access to healthcare, access to education, and so on. So this digital infrastructure was because India is crazy, and India is with all of us, tremendous IT skills in the country, and good political will, good regulatory support. So we seem to be building much more than India stack. We are building health stack, if you have not been tracking. We are building education stack with Rahul and Samagra as integral part of that journey. Some of you will work on some of these as part of the GovTech. We have urban development infrastructure being developed, digital infrastructure, financial digital infrastructure like lending offers and so on. FASTag, all of you probably have experienced it. Everywhere now we are going, becoming that. And latest is, in case you have not heard, ONDC, which is taking on Amazon's and Uber's monopoly. India is taking on using a open electronic e-commerce marketplace. Not even marketplace, open e-commerce network driven by protocol. And so what is the difference? Pre-90s, probably none of you are born, so I have to just tell you the story. Pre-90s, when we only had one telephone company called BSNL and one airline called Air India, and one everything, pretty much government run. So it's pretty bad, right? Obviously, nobody wants to go back to that time. If you have not lived there, don't live there, because you are very lucky. Consider yourself very lucky. Milk was rationed, food was rationed, and we all had to stand in line, including me, and including all of us, to get our milk and get our sugar. Okay, not the right time, because it becomes a single provider, and also slow innovation, and government being provider. The bargaining power is no more with you and I. It's always with the shopkeeper, and it's always with the government, Babu. So it's not never really did in that sense work out, right? But we moved on. But in the US, they went to the other extreme. If you analyze it, they just outsource everything to big tech. Then you have the same problem, winner take all behavior, walled garden behavior, and significant backlash from regulatory backlash in UK and EU and Australia against the big tech. And war, today's Ukraine war, demonstrated that outsourcing your payment infrastructure to a big tech is a disaster for a country. I'm not taking sides on who is the war, who is the right, wrong. War is never good for humanity and never should happen. But simply, two companies decided to switch off all digital payments to Russia. So imagine if India didn't build any of this infrastructure. Somebody could just flip a kill switch if some country doesn't like us, and we would have left with nothing. And today's maps and road and ATMs and payments, you depend on everything on digital. So we must have a balanced view, and that's what India is doing. India is saying we will create digital public infrastructure and digital public goods in the green, so that many of you who will be turned into entrepreneurs will build phone pays of the world and Paytms of the world, or Go Frugals of the world, or Mauglics of the world, and there are hundreds and hundreds of companies, entrepreneurs. Only some of them we hear of because they just raise a lot of funds. But there are lots of good, Zohos of the world, and Nitin Kama doing, Zerodha, and so on. I mean, name so many of them innovating, but they cannot innovate if you don't provide them a playing field, a playing ground for them to play, and actually access to 200, 300, 400 million who are aspirational Indian who wants for this product. They cannot be kept outside, right? But if you look behind each of them, there is open source product, and some of them are not directly, but there is an open source equivalent. And I've listed many of those open source. DePi.world is the protocol. Beckn Protocol is the behind ONDC and UHI, and Sunbird. Much of you will start working on some of the building blocks. Is what is powering Diksha around much of India. Digit.org and IUDX, which is IASC-driven project, is powering Urban Stack, and iSpirit's Oken is powering the lending protocol, and many more. And the good thing is that, including, by the way, UPI, I don't know whether you know, but we have heard some of our talks, UPI and Aadhaar and every one of them doing massive amount of computing and massive amount of processing is completely built on this open source. So building GovTech, open source GovTech, is a serious investment, it's a serious ask, and our country, India, for sure, will depend on many of you and what you build and GovTech being built to run our digital infrastructure for 1 billion people. So it's important that you take this not as just another open source. Even one line of code going into Sunbird can change Diksha, and Diksha touches 200 million children today. So your code can impact, it is very, very large, and hence the responsibility. With great power comes to great responsibility, right? So, you are all, again, wonderful to see you all participating. Congratulations to every one of you. We need a lot more of you to put up your hand and join the effort of building open source digital infrastructure that powers our nation and ensure that we are resilient to our own, and we are in control of our own destiny for 1 billion people. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Pramod, for those amazing and really mind-blowing statistics. We don't pause to think that this is actually happening. In the last 10 years, India has changed. The world is asking India, hey, how did India do this and how did India do that? And it's truly transformational. You just made that so real for everyone. Thank you. So Pramod, moving to the Q&A, trying to understand a whole bunch of questions from a variety of sources that are coming in. So let's start with a question around standards and laws. So this question is around the future of DPGs in India. So we'll try to group these questions in different blocks. So you mentioned digital public goods are really the future backbone of building this kind of infrastructure. And one question around that is, how do laws and standards interoperate? Because what may be the perfect standard may not adhere to law, and cryptocurrency is kind of a great example where policy intersects standard. How do you, where does that come into the overall picture? How do you add that in?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, we are a democracy, and we have agreed as a society to adhere by our constitution, run some rules of the game for whether it's financial industry, health industry, and so on. Keeping inclusion, definitely inclusion and societal development in mind, because we just cannot ignore millions and millions of families who need to be brought into the formal economy, rather than leaving them to money lenders and on the roadside and so on, right? So keeping these principles and contours, our constitutional democratic contours, we must have definitely rules of the game that allows. But there's a balance though, right? So laws are needed, but prescriptive laws are pretty bad. But because countries evolve very fast and societies evolve very fast. So my personal view always have been laws have to be principled in nature, not prescriptive in nature. Like if data empowerment, it must say that everybody must have access to data. Everybody must have the right to access my data, or my digital footprints. That's a good law to bring it in to empower the people. And the purpose of that law has to be also very clear. Prescriptions have to be very careful. I think our government, I'm not sure whether we do, sometimes we do a good job, sometimes we do a pretty bad job in terms of prescribing, and when they prescribe, they get it wrong, and then they go back and re-prescribe and so on. So I am of the opinion that sort of minimal prescription is what is needed, and you must let the entrepreneurial energy flow, and then look at the need for bringing regulations and rules, right? Sometimes you don't need it. You can just let those entrepreneurs innovate, and don't curb them by government rules and regulations that not required. So because every time we put rules and regulation, it actually creates enormous friction in innovation. Okay, no question about it. Entrepreneurs find it very hard. But some things like tax paying and all that thing is tax and death, you can't avoid, I think, in life. So it's one of those things, right? So we just have to do it. Violence, laws, those kind of things, right? No choice but to have some sort of rules of the game to ensure that we are not becoming like animals. We are just developed society, and we must go towards thoughtful, careful, and empathetic society. So there's no question about that. But otherwise, generally, don't have to be prescriptive. So I think that's the balance. So it's very tricky. So I would, for example, blockchain, if you take it, that it was very, very key. It will go up and down with it's any tech bubble will burst, and it will go through a maturity cycle. And there is very good things about blockchain and a very bad hype around it. So we just have to, eventually it will correct itself. But government steps in, when there are two things again, government is trying to step in. One, does it have a fundamental ability to remove the democratic institutions that exist? The central bank have no play, then we have a bigger problem, right? So I think when that comes, they'll start stepping in. Second, they start stepping in is when large section of society gets conned into doing shit, right? So for example, NFT, monkey NFT, and all people are investing, and the only investor, like my driver all starts investing in NFT, I would actually tell him, dude, are you crazy? Go support your daughter in education, all that thing, monkey NFT and all will come later. There's some rich people investing in rich thing doesn't mean you can. Now, taking 10% of your earning and playing it is no big deal, gambling it. But people don't understand that easily, and our societies may not understand. So that is when the government again steps in. So government does step in when they think, but every time they step in, they do create issues as well, okay? So we have to be very carefully balancing these acts.
Yeah. No, that's great, Pramod. Thank you. I think principles, not prescription, is the best thing to do from a legal point of view and policy point of view. Pramod, another question in terms of pushing the limits of technology. How have you seen, where do technologies like metaverse play a role in all of this? So where do you see AR, VR, actually coming into the overall mainstream experience?
So I think it is, for me, it's just a gradual, natural move towards what you call digital experience being expanded. We experience digital through laptops, and even before that on desktops, or even what do you call it, some sort of large machines. Typically, we didn't even have some desktop maybe. I don't know any of you have heard of Gopher protocol. Rahul may have, but he's slightly older, unlike you. Yeah. So early pre-HTTP days, and all of us were on Gopher protocol talking and all that thing, 90s and 91 and all that thing. Then HTTP came, then Mozilla came, and our experiences kept improving. And then a mobile phone came and dramatically changed the idea of a keyboard going away. Keyboard was a very tech-driven innovation, techie-driven innovation, I would say. It's not for common man, right? And then we forced everybody to learn that damn thing, keyboard, right? But otherwise, the touch was a very natural human thing. And that's why it just took the computer in everybody's hand. Powerful computer with touch dramatically changed that experience. Now it's natural that it would go into more and more seamless experiences, immersive experiences, and immersive experiences that is, and the dial is between real world, which is what I see when I look out, versus completely virtual world, versus an augmented reality world, which is somewhere in between, right? Where I augment my digital information on top of my physical world. So when I see you, sort of start showing, oh, this is my friend from my contact, this is Rahul, and so on, right? You spoke to him 2 days back. Now, how creepy it is, I don't know, but that I think it's a creepiness is it's a generation gap, according to me. Creepiness is pure. Yeah. So people will go in there. But how is it? Is there just another technology? It will be impactful for. How do we drive these at the right time? When it start becoming mainstream? We can start leveraging them. I think our idea should be, unless you are building some of this core tech, I mean, you guys are all IITians and so on, so you can probably build some of this tech as well. But if you are not, leverage them. Where leverage happens when it starts becoming mainstream, and then you leverage where? If you are in health tech, you start asking this question, can telemedicine be dramatically changed to almost getting the experiences of me sitting in front of a doctor rather than staring at a flat Zoom screen, right? And so on, and or education for that matter, is dramatically changing. So leveraging is even more, leverage will be much higher than the people who create. Create will be, few people will create, more people will leverage, right? So we must think about leveraging at appropriate time. I mean, inevitable. This is all going to happen, and more digital. So some of the dystopian movies you see, where people just stop going out and only my avatar goes out and my avatar lives in the digital world. Possibly going to come true, partly going to come true, but I think I always believe society and humans will balance something out. Yeah, but my parents wouldn't like even me using my smartphone so much, right? They would say, "Why are you bloody staring at this damn thing all the time?" And then my children using it may be different from me, and so on. So I think it's just a continuous evolution.
Got it. Yeah, Pramod, this is wonderful. One question coming from Saket is, when it comes to education, what is the thing that's happening in the open source world to really drive inclusivity alone? Just that dimension of education. So when Dr. Garg earlier started off, he mentioned, look, even 99%, 0.9% of Aadhaar is not good enough. You need the 0.1%. Similarly, on the education front, what do you think is the real thing that's going to swing the needle towards 100% children really being educated? Because all the fancy technologies we talk about, oh yes, we'll get voice recognition, and oh yes, we'll get metaverse and all of this, they don't have access to even devices, right? Even a single device, while it's prevalent, children don't get access to it. So anything dramatic that you can think of, a future of education where it's 100% inclusive?
So there are two parts to it, very much two different, and we end up conflating many times. Oh, by the way, my videos seem to have shown up by this. So
yes.
That's how I actually look, okay? Yeah, it's not how I used to look before, yeah. So there are two parts. One, access to learning opportunities, opportunity to learn, opportunity to practice, like internships and so on, like you guys doing in GovTech, opportunity to practice, opportunity to be mentored, opportunity to access to scholarships and support system, right? Other resources like books and so on. We must, that's what's called a necessary condition. It's not sufficient, it's necessary condition for sure. We must attack systematically the access vector through reducing the cost of access and cost of delivery of this access. And we must be universal in nature, saying that nobody should be able to say, I don't get access, I didn't know about a scholarship, I was a poor girl who comes from a poor family. I didn't know there was a scholarship exists, right? So we must aggressively ensure using digital technologies that the plumbing is laid to every home where their access to the water, right? Access to that opportunity exists. Does not mean people will convert opportunity to actual outcome. And we don't even know what do you mean by everybody need to be educated.
Yeah.
Educated people can be completely wacko. Non-educated people can be quite sane. So I don't even know where that is so philosophical in nature. But we actually talk about two parts. Again, within educated, there's foundational learning. That means ability to think and ability to learn and the basic language comprehension and ability to do numeracy, right? Basic understanding of numbers, basic very good grasp of language and comprehension, and on top of that, ability to learn and ability to practice, right? Ability to apply what you've learned. That's what education is about. What will you think? If you think that after all this education, getting out on the road and throwing stone at the bus is the right thing to do, we probably have to deal with it differently. That's not about education at all. It is about a collective conscience of a society and the value systems that we built into society. But I think this is left to individual.
Beautiful, beautifully.
I think so. Don't connect all these things put into one box, and you'll get confused about this box. So access is very simple. Digital access, everybody, opportunity. Ask the question: can I do something to change the opportunity vector? Can I provide better access? Then ask the question: can I give the basic outcome? Which is outcome is ability to learn, ability to comprehend, ability to think, and ability to apply. Can I give that for sure to every child? And then after that comes everything else.
This is like a Bloom's taxonomy for education, but not the Bloom's taxonomy. This is more of the Maslow's hierarchy for education, where roti, kapda, makan is at the bottom. Instead of that, you're saying, hey, access needs to be at the bottom.
And nobody should be denied of an access, because that is a bad setup to be in a democratic society.
Beautifully put. Pramod, one question from Parth. Parth's asking, how do you see open source initiated by government sustain over time in terms of adoption, contribution? How can we ensure sustainability of open source software creation?
Very, very good point. I think when government, some of the earlier efforts we did, and Rahul and all will know, we did government, we did open source, and we did tech inside the government. Let me put it that way. That means a lot of us as volunteers, and I'm not a government employee, but we were volunteering to build all these things, right? We were helping the government build this technology inside them. But we realized their way, government being a taxpayer's money, they have a lot of procurement rules. That means they need to procure through only open tender, open RFP, open evaluation, and eventually they end up, that RFP-driven method is very hard to sustain innovation. So in RFP-driven method, it becomes very, if you know exactly what you want to build, then you can put an RFP. You can't put an RFP to say, imagine how Aadhaar will evolve or UPI will evolve. We didn't even know. I started UPI work in 2013, by the way. 2000 June is when I started UPI thinking, and UPI 2014 is when I started writing protocol. 2015 we did some early pilot. 2016 we launched. So 4 years later, how did we know where it will go? We have no idea how it will go. It will evolve itself. So RFPs don't cut it. So one of the learnings we had is that what if foundations and other organizations, institutions, open source communities like this step up and provide a sustainable, funded, well-designed open source infrastructure like the Apache Foundation did to tech and Mozilla Foundation did. Why can't India up the game and actually build a lot more digital tech that can be sustained by a powerful community, funded, maybe even funded through GitHub funding, donation funding. It doesn't matter. We have enough funds. By the way, we have never done the funds. That's a funny thing. Money is not it's the intent and the people wanting to do it. So if you can open source community, government can adopt it. So one of the things we did in 2014 is to bring open source policy within the government. So we asked the government to formally declare that you will adopt open source. Otherwise, they were not even ready to adopt open source because all these vendors will say, sir, open source and all, who will support? What will happen? You will die. Night time, one database will come down and you will be blamed. So they used to get afraid, right? You can scare them quite easily, by the way. Yeah, so because they don't know, their taxpayers' money, their spending and responsibility is very high on government bureaucrats because the impact could be in millions of people, no? So they're very sensitive about it. But so policy, you unblocked your earlier question, laws and policy. Where does policy is an unblocker? Policy we unblocked through a policy so that people can adopt open source. And then Aadhaar adopted, UPI adopted, and Diksha adopted, and everyone. Each time you have a successful, people used to say, of course, if Diksha can run, UPI can run, Aadhaar can run on open source, why can't my departmental system run on open source? No, these are national systems, yeah. Completely built on open source. UPI, there's not even database itself, everything is open source, by the way. UPI. No paid component. An entire 6 billion transactions a month we do, right? So it's amazing how much we can do. But that requires a sustenance and a powerful, committed, and accountable, responsible community. And the community creation comes from efforts like this.
Yes.
Systematically talking to students, you talking to the next batch, and everybody motivating people to say 10 lines. That's all you will need. But step up the game. You ought to be part of open source infrastructure that's going to be set up the way India is going to drive our democratic access in health, education, and so on. It's an opportunity. Some people may not want to take it. Some people want to take it. I think I see all of you taking it. It's wonderful. And congratulations again.
Great. No, fantastic, Pramod. Very, very pertinent points there. And I think you also answered one of the other questions that's coming in, which is, what are the potential risks of open source technologies that entrepreneurs need to be cognizant about? You touched on a couple of those, right? You need to step up. You need to get this going. You need to ensure, adoption and openness to these things.
Yeah. So I think the governance is a very important thing. I think Rahul and Samagra team has been tremendously pushy, frankly, very good pushy, by the way, about better governance, better transparent processes within the community, upvoting, downvoting features, and PR reviews, ensuring that the code that goes in, whatever we can in terms of community can. But the good thing is that even after all that, I think community output is still open source, and government can set up another layer of scrutiny. The good thing is about public scrutiny. That everybody can see the code. And the bad thing about public scrutiny is that everybody can touch the code and see the code. So you have to be very careful. If you don't have a good governance model, you have no idea what code has gone in. And as a community, people will ask you, your code is not dependable and reliable, and that's a bad thing. So as a community, we need to say it's a community problem. We need to make sure it's not a one entity problem. It is together. We have to believe that we will collectively do the right thing.
Perfect. No, thanks so much. There are a bunch of questions, but we're running out of time. One last question, Pramod. What's your message to our selected cohort now who would be working towards these DPG projects over the next 45 days? What would you like to say to them?
Only like maybe 2 or 3 messages. One, you are very, very lucky, I can tell you, because you are going to be, the code and the stuff that you're going to be doing is going to actually impact not few million, 10 million, 5 million, 100+ million, okay, of people in this country. So be very lucky, very proud. Be very proud of yourself. Second, shamelessly learn, okay, everything. And if you're not asking questions to mentors, and if your mentors are not giving answers, bring it out. You can even correct a mentor collective open discussion boards where some of us can also start. We can't mentor you every day. It gets harder for us, but we can all participate and help it out. So maybe you can set up some sort of mechanism. So shamelessly learn. Okay, that's the second point I want to say. And third, most importantly, have fun. Definitely have fun. If you are not waking up wanting to do it, please don't do it. There are lots of other good stuff to do in life. So you might want to try something else.
Fantastic messages, Pramod. No, thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending time with us. And it's just been so invigorating for the entire group to hear you speak and to hear of the potential for all of this. So I think it's very, very clear to everyone, I'm sure, all the contributors, mentors, that everything being done part of this initiative is going towards the greater good and really transforming lives at the bigger with the bigger picture. Thanks again.
All the very best, and thanks for having me. And take care of yourself.
Thank you so much, Pramod, for making time.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, Dr. Varma, for a great session. This has been illuminating for all of us, and particularly the newly inducted cohort of C4GT contributors. Thank you so much for joining us today for the launch. As we move on to the last segment of this event, picking up from where Dr. Varma left us on the importance of community and what C4GT means for the community, Rahul, I'd like to invite you to now share closing remarks on the same. Over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Gayatri. So everyone, contributors, mentors, everyone who's been part of this initiative to get it going so far, there are folks who have been selected to have this paid internship, part of Code for GovTech, contributing to projects, having a dedicated mentor, a dedicated project, a timeline, a project in hand, and so on. Heartiest congratulations. You made it out of a very, very tough choice of projects. We were reviewing all these proposals, and every one of you had put in a really, really good amount of time, energy, and expertise. It was really showing. So amazing talent that came in through those 92 proposals that were selected. Now, only, of course, 12 had to be accepted, but I want to make sure everyone here knows and listens and is clear that this initiative is not to only have 12 contributors, only have 100 contributors. This is an initiative with all of us trying to help the community really get up to speed on open source. I tell you, every one of you, you aspire to go into this startup, that company. None of these startups, none of even the large companies have the scale that India has. When you build for India, as Pramod said, you're building for hundreds of millions of people. You're building for 1 billion people. So every project that you have is going to touch billions. So we need all of you to really understand how GovTech works. Just expose yourself to that. It's really addictive. It is empowering, and it is tremendously satisfying, because every line of code you write would actually help change a life somewhere. Now, how do you go about doing that? Many questions. I remember Harshit in the initial 5 minutes shot a question. Hey, where are these DPGs? Do they have websites? Do they have GitHub? Yes, 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 yes. And yes, that access that Pramod mentioned, right, is sometimes a challenge. We don't know where things exist. We don't know where to go. We don't know what group to join. We don't know where to contribute. And I'm sure many of you, most of you are in that bucket, and we are here to help you learn. So what we're going to do is, all of you, whether you made it or not made it, you are now part of Code for GovTech community as a GovTech enthusiast. We're going to continue that community of 600 on Discord, so don't drop off. We're going to do a couple of things there. One, we want to keep sending you links to relevant GovTech events, repositories, things that you should be reading up on, learning upon, just to keep aware. Why? Because just like it's important that you keep up with what's the next React and what is the next palette substrate and what is the next metaverse, you also need to keep in touch with what is the next protocol. And that's something that completely changes lives. How many of you knew UPI was coming? Did you contribute to the spec? Did you contribute? Are you contributing to the UHI spec for healthcare? Are you contributing to the education spec in Beckn for DSEP? Everyone's been invited. It's all open. It's all happening on GitHub. Now, how do you get to it? We'll keep sending links on Discord, and please share this. It's for everyone. Second is, we're going to leave out ideas. All the mentoring organizations, by the way, all the mentors, you see amazing names with amazing resumes there. They're all here to help the open source community grow. And towards that, what we're all going to do is, every time we get an interesting idea, hey, why don't you prototype this? Hey, how about, why can't we use blockchain to create report cards? How about, can't we use metaverse to do something to actually take attendance? Can we actually use blockchain to do something beyond crypto? How about smart contracts attached to a digital rupee? What would that look like? Now, whether it's going to get launched or not sure about that, but you would be stretching the limits of technology. You would be showcasing what's possible, not possible. And it's all in the spirit of learning. Thirdly, what I'd like to make sure that we continue to do is to keep sending you a couple of tutorials or pointers to repositories that exist, that many of them Pramod mentioned. For example, Sunbird, there are Sunbird building blocks, like 10 plus Sunbird building blocks, all of them open source. You can contribute. Everyone loves contributions. So you've just got to get started, and don't think that you're going to come in and completely change the whole thing. Come in, start with documentation, start with a bug fix, start with a little feature that you contribute, participate in the discussion forums, participate in the committee meetings, and then things change. You suddenly start bringing about that change. So this is the whole construct of Code for GovTech, truly for you to learn and get exposed to this wonderful world out there that is truly changing, not just India, but the world. So very, very warm welcome to you all, part of the GovTech, Code for GovTech community. Stay in touch, stay learning, and create that impact at scale. That's what we are all here about. And follow Code for GovTech on a variety of channels. But I think definitely don't miss out on the Discord group. I posted that in one of the answers earlier on the Q&A. All right, thank you so much. Gayatri?
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you for those words of inspiration. Thank you everyone for joining us today for the inauguration of C4GT 2022. Thank you also to our mentors and partners. We wish all the contributors the very best for the coding period. Thank you all and have a great rest of the day.